Well, all right. Hey, Tanisha. Thank you so
Hey,
much for doing this interview. Really excited to have you here. You're going to teach us all about your experience with topical steroid withdrawal syndrome and how that's affected you, and also how you were able to crawl your way out of that and transform your health. So I really appreciate your willingness to share your story. I want to get right into it. So start off with telling us what that experience was like living with topical steroid withdrawal, with red skin syndrome, and what your symptoms were like and what all that looked like.
absolutely. So I have been on topical steroids since I was in elementary school, so maybe 25, 30-ish years.
Mhm.
And topically, but also injections. So what I thought was eczema anytime I take a break from those steroids was really my body going through small periods of withdrawal. And the doctors would simply say, oh, you just have eczema. You're going to have that. You need to go back to your steroids. So after being on these for so many years, the shots that I would take annually, they stopped being as effective. And the eczema, what I thought was eczema, but really was withdrawal, would come back quicker. And I'd have to take them twice a year and then more frequently. And I had a conversation with my dermatologist and I simply said, what other options do I have? I'm doing some research and I'm not feeling as comfortable being on steroids for long periods of time. It doesn't seem as safe as what I've been told. And she said, oh, yeah, there's some new things that have come out. There's some immunosuppressants. There are biologics, which kind of like change your body in a way that I can't fully explain, but it didn't make me comfortable. And she said, but if you take these, you're going to be on them for the rest of your life. And something inside of me simply said, absolutely not. This is not my path. This is not my journey. And in that moment, I decided to take control of my life and that I would never take steroids again. And I didn't from that dermatology appointment. And from that period on, I started to go through withdrawals. And withdrawals are like a drug withdrawal because a steroid is essentially a drug. And just like you see people who are, withdrawing from narcotics and they're shivering and shaking and vomiting, there's a similar experience with TSW, topical steroid withdrawal, where the first phase you get really inflamed. For African American, it's called red skin syndrome, but because of our beautiful melanin, you can't always see the red. It's more of a purple tone or a dark brown. You get a lot of hyperpigmentation in your skin. So you get really red. The itch is something that's beyond description. It's if I could describe it in words, it'd be like your bones are itching and you're scratching through the layers of skin and tissue to
Mm.
scratch your bones. So you
Wow.
break your skin, you bleed, and you don't get sleep because you're constantly itching 24/7. There was during that early phase of TSW, there was not a moment I was not itching. And you then move on to a phase where your skin begins to ooze, and I would have flakes that are like this big sliding off of my skin with ooze being behind it. The ooze has a terrible smell to it. You feel disgusting. I would wake up and my shirt was like stuck to my back, and I'd have to literally peel my clothes off. And I was raw and shameful. I was filled with shame because I felt disgusting. And then once you move past the ooze, you go to a phase of beyond extreme flakes. So think about an 8-ounce glass that is completely filled with your skin daily, not like over time, but every single day. So you wake up, you get out of bed, you pull your covers back, and your sheets are like there was sand poured all over them because it's your skin. So you're constantly turning over skin. I don't want to go anywhere because I know if I get up from a seat, I'm going to leave skin everywhere. So it was horrible. I was anxious. I was depressed. I was having panic attacks, not sleeping well. And it was one of the hardest experiences I've ever gone through in my life. The mental toll was way worse than the physical. And I was really looking for hope.
What an incredible story. I can't even imagine. I've certainly gone through my own personal health hell and experiences with chronic illness in different ways, but what a unique experience, and hard to imagine that kind of itching like down to the bone, almost like this internal kind of sensation, which must have driven you crazy.
Yes.
And I also can't imagine how all the skin flaking and leaving behind all those large amounts of skin, and how people could see that externally, would affect your self-confidence and your mental health as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so you had been, ever increasing these doses of medications to try to get the desired effect. And
Yep.
it ultimately, what? Wasn't really working.
No, it was
Mm.
declining. It
Mhm.
used to work really well, and it stopped working as well. I had to apply it more. And as I started to do research about steroids, I'm like, okay, maybe this is why I'm so tired. Just the negative effects of it. I was like, okay, maybe this is why this is going on inside of me. And it was really about taking charge of my life and deciding that even though this person went to school, this doctor, they have a white coat, I would definitely go to them if I have an accident. I am going to
Sure.
go find me a white coat. Please help me. But they're not God. They don't have the final say and the final decision to tell me that I will never be able to function without their medicine. Lies, 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 lies. That's not the truth. And I had gone through some functional doctors that were not as effective. And one of them was a little kooky, doing like muscle texting over Zoom.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
I didn't lose hope in the discipline of functional medicine. So the conventional way did not work for me. So this was really the only path that I had to take, because doctors, when you go to doctors, they're just going to give you what they know. They told me that there was no connection to diet, and all they know are prescriptions. So they think I'm crazy. They think, why would you put yourself through this and you could just take this medicine? And you really got to step outside of that and talk to other people who have healed in natural ways. And that's actually how I found you. There was a coworker who told me about her experience in working with you and how she had autoimmune issues. And she's like, Tneisha, I know you've tried some and spent money, but I really think that you should give Dr. Ryan a try. And I had faith that eventually this was my only way. I'm only going to heal naturally because the doctors are not working for me. So I really had hope. That was the ultimate. Faith is my ultimate thing. And I knew that the how I may not know. I don't know exactly how, but I know if I continue to have faith and remain open, it's going to come to me. And it did, like out of the blue. Hey, I really think you should try this person. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give them a try. I'm going to call them.
So important that you maintain that hope and faith throughout the process, even though you had some wins and some misses, right? You had also mentioned, working with different doctors where they were really just attempting to kind of suppress the symptoms, work within their own skill set, which is, largely pharmacology, prescriptions and medications, and in some case surgeries, right? But
Yep.
there's an expression that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's what all they know, then, and if they're not trained in functional approaches to healing or diet and lifestyle medicine approaches, they wouldn't even know to be able to recommend those kind of tools to support you, right?
Yeah.
I have friends that are medical doctors that have told me, in medical school, they've only gotten a total of 8 hours maybe of nutrition in their 8 years of medical training. So it's shocking, but not surprising, right? And that's just kind of the modality. So what else would we expect? Because that's what we get when we go to the doctor. And like you said, I'm totally with you. If I break my arm or I get, third-degree burns or something, take me to the medical doctor, not the herbalist, right?
Yes.
So absolutely, like we have an exceptional emergency care in the United States, but I feel like a lot of clients that come to me, they're falling in the cracks of the medical system. They're not getting the care that they deserve. Even sometimes with functional medicine doctors that are, they still have that kind of conventional mindset. They're still thinking about, kind of treating or suppressing symptoms
Yeah.
without necessarily that root cause analysis, which we'll eventually get to.
Yep.
Yeah. So before we get to that transformation, you did allude to this to some extent, but tell us a little bit more about what your life looked like as a result of those symptoms. Like, what was your, kind of day-to-day experience?
Utter depression. I was depressed. I was having panic attacks. I wasn't sleeping. It was during the pandemic. So everybody was in the house, but I didn't want to be on Zoom calls. I didn't want to take any phone calls. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I didn't want to play or speak or deal with my children. I wasn't a present human. I was just a fragment of myself during this time, because what we go through with TSW is so much, it's a physical experience, but it's an even worse mental experience, because you're so alone. There are not many resources out there. You don't know when it's going to be over, because the general direction in the community is like, you'll just heal with time. Just give it time. But when you've already been in it for an extended period of time, you're like,
Probably
okay,
feels like an eternity. Yeah.
How much more time is it going to take? So I had to actually get the assistance of a therapist as well, just to deal with the thoughts and to get out of the despair and keep the hope that it is going to get better. My now is not my forever. And if I just keep the hope, it's going to get better. So it was awful. I'm just going to be honest. And I see people suffering in my community all the time. And I'm just like, please just get you a functional doctor. I know they tell you that it's just time, but as we'll get into, there were so many other things that were making it harder for my body to heal. I believe my body is always attempting to heal, but you can either hinder it or help it. And I was not helping it by not addressing some of the underlying things.
Absolutely. I firmly believe from the functional perspective, if we give the body the inputs that it needs to heal, then we do have that capacity. And it's also about identifying what I call interferences to healing. What are the things that are blocking healing from occurring, right?
Yep.
So yeah, very, very much would agree with that philosophy. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So where did you start to turn a corner, and what were you doing differently that, after 30 years on topical steroids and injections, you did eventually start to see some change and recovery. So tell us about that.
When I called you, when we started to work together. So I would like people to understand that in TSW, the steroids could possibly be hiding some of the things that are going on, because it's suppressing inflammation. It's not allowing your body to express the symptoms that can be warning signs that there are other things that are going on, because you're just injecting or putting on something to kind of cover that up. But then also, I never took a really deep look at my health. So once we started to work together, and your philosophy being test, don't guess, we started going through all these tests. And initially I was overwhelmed by the things that were quote unquote wrong. And working with you, you even had to help me see that this is positive. This information is a positive thing. At least now and we can start to work on them. So we took the approach, with your guidance, let's work on the most important things first. Let's get the most pressing things. And then there were other aspects that were clues, and you say, because you have this and this, I want to do another test to test this. So I had like low iron, vitamin levels were all off, hormones were out of balance, you're going to be able to say it better than I will, but microbiome issues. I had intestinal, like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And what else? There were so many things.
You actually got a lot of that pretty dead on. SIBO, hormone imbalances. There were some mineral imbalances. there were evidence of some toxins like heavy metals and mold toxins, which we call mycotoxins, some nutrient deficiencies. Collectively, as FDNs, we like to call this metabolic chaos, which is kind of an all-encompassing term to describe all these imbalances in the body. And, you'll often hear this term like find the root cause, get to the root cause, but which is true. But where I would add some additional color to that is that for the average person, there's never just one root cause, singular. It's usually a collection of root causes, plural. It's like a web of interrelated causes. So I think sometimes when people work with a functional practitioner, they're looking for this silver bullet or smoking gun, but it doesn't work like that. There's usually a complexity of things going on that have built up too over the years. Like dysfunction doesn't occur overnight. It really doesn't. You had also mentioned the steroids just suppressing the symptom, which was really astute, and not really addressing the root cause. So, those kinds of approaches, while yes, they can make you feel better, it's still kind of allowing the underlying causes to fester and even get worse.
Yes.
Right. That's why, ultimately, this is the approach that I've had the most success with in my own healing journey with Hashimoto's, and the approach that worked the best for you after years of jumping around from practitioner to practitioner.
Yes. And what I appreciated about you was you set the expectations. You were very realistic about a lot of it being my responsibility. I have to take the supplements, and I had to do the things that I would consider, like hokey kind of, get out and get sun. Like the importance of that, improving my mood. I had an extreme vitamin D deficiency, and getting out, like I would put my feet on the ground, I'm journaling, I'm breathing to be, the mindfulness, the heart math stuff, all of these things, in addition to addressing the deficiencies and the SIBO and all of those types of things. But it's important for people to know, in my experience, it actually took a lot of time for it to turn the corner because of all of the interwoven things. And I had to remember, at my age, it took me many years to get here.
Exactly.
And the fast stuff doesn't work well. You know what I mean? Like the fast stuff is not true healing. It's just getting rid of the symptoms. So when it's like a good home cooked meal. It takes hours to simmer. You can go to McDonald's, but that's not good for you. The home cooked meal that you're going to have is going to take longer. And I had to just keep reminding myself, it's going to take time. It's going to take time. But once I look back, it really wasn't that much time. It's just, you're so used to conventional medicine giving you this instant change. And I'm like, okay, so when am I going to stop this? And then you would walk with me. So we'd address a couple of things. And then if that didn't do something, I'm still really itchy. And then you said, let's do a gluten test. That gluten test was a game changer. And I thought I was like, he's going to be wrong. That's not going to be anything, because I've been eating gluten all my life. I'm not gluten intolerant. He's wrong. And what? I was off the Richter scale to where even crumbs.
That's right.
Crumbs.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. You were lit up like a Christmas tree. Yeah. Just to mention this too, before I forget, you had mentioned, you threw in the word McDonald's, and just to kind of bring this full circle, it's like, there's no fast food approach to healing. And I think we live in this instant gratification, fast food culture, right? So this kind of approach to healing, it is a slow and steady approach, and the changes can be incremental. But you mentioned this yourself too. It can take us a lifetime to accumulate all this damage in the body: inflammation, oxidative stress, hormone imbalances, nutrient deficiencies, leaky gut. It can go on and on and on. This stuff doesn't just happen overnight, so we're not going to fix it overnight, and we have to go into it with that realistic expectation.
Yeah, and you deserve it. Like, give yourself the time and attention that you deserve. You deserve to take the time to dig in. But there were some things that improved quickly. So like once we learned about the gluten and you gave me a supplement to, because you weren't, there were other doctors that felt like militant drill sergeants. You cannot eat this ever and you can't do this ever. And there were guidelines and there were diet plans, but every once in a while I'm going to have to go out to eat, right? So there may be some cross contamination. So you gave me something to buffer against that, to help my body metabolize gluten if it were to cross contaminate. And yes, there may be some things on the food that aren't best for me, but you can't completely shut down your life. So it was also a realistic approach as well. So there were some things that took time, but when we would retest, the dial was moving. Like we could see progress, even though I didn't necessarily feel it. I felt the fatigue got a lot better. So there were certain things that I could feel immediately, and then certain things that I'm like, I don't really feel anything, but the results spoke for themselves. But there was one thing that you did that worked instantly. So when I was having the hormone imbalance, once we figured out that it wasn't estrogen dominance, it was more really low progesterone.
Low progesterone, yep.
Yes. And you gave me a couple of supplements to deal with that, because I was having the cramps were so debilitating to where I would scream. Like it felt like childbirth. And I was like, hey, this cramping is extreme. And it's almost like we would fix something and then something else would happen. And I remember you telling me that your body's trying to work on so many things that it's kind of layered. And once you fix this, it's like, okay, now we can give some attention. Your body's like, hey, now I can get some attention here. But that progesterone supplement that you gave me and the approach that we took, once I was faithful with it, that stopped immediately, which I was grateful for. So there were some things that I could see quick results.
Yep. Yeah. It's very much like the body is sort of like an onion, and it's kind of peeling back these layers. And that's very common experience with healing, that things will kind of improve sort of one at a time, or almost kind of like in these layers.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell us more about how working together was different from working. We covered some of this in context. So we maybe don't need to spend too much time here, but any other differences between you and I working together and working with other conventional medical doctors or functional doctors?
Yeah, it was very different, because it wasn't just, let me just write you a prescription and you move on. You were very invested in figuring, the information sessions, you'd be saying so much information on the calls. I, of course, had to record them and watch them later, because I'm like, this is biochemistry. Like, he is the real deal. He's giving me all of the details, how this connects. And I really would love if you could, let me keep going, but I want you to explain the histamine bucket that you shared with me, because I think that's very helpful for our audience, the TSW audience. But for me, you were invested. I could tell that you knew what you were talking about. I love the test, not guess approach. And then you also went beyond just looking at my levels and looking at supplements. You would say, okay, get out and get some sun. And hey, you need to really focus on your breathing. And it was truly a holistic approach. And I would share things with you and you say, okay, well, that could be contributing to this. Let's look at your environment, like all the pieces you would try to put together. And I really appreciated that investment outside of course, we know conventional medicine, they're not going to do that. You need to be out of their office in 15 minutes. There is no 1 hour walkthrough weekly of your whole life. That's not happening.
And what were the length roughly of each of our calls?
Yeah, like an hour a week. That is intense. And I don't know anybody who does that. So I was grateful for the investment, and I could tell you prepared. You would read through it. You'd write up a summary of what's going on and take the time to really educate me on what's happening with my body. So I felt coached and I felt cared for throughout the process. and not just written off. Like, you were invested as much as I was. And as long as I was giving my part and I'm taking the supplements and I'm following your directions, we would feed off of each other. And I felt that the investment was reciprocated.
I'll speak to that briefly. I truly follow a version of the golden rule in my practice, and having lived with chronic illness myself, with Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease, I spent more than 10 years working with over 40 doctors before I got a diagnosis for that Hashimoto's. So like yourself and many others that come to me, became somewhat disenchanted, to say the least, with the conventional medical model. Was one of those people that kind of fell through the cracks of the system. And so I essentially made it my mission to become the person that I wish I had helping me when I was at rock bottom with my own health illness. And that's how I'm thinking every day when I'm working with clients. Like, you know, what would I want this experience to be like if I was on that other side? I would want careful attention to detail. I'd want everything explained. I'd want to examine every aspect of my health to leave no stone unturned. And when I work with a client, that's what I tell them, right? You remember at the beginning, I said, this is going to be the most comprehensive investigation into your health you've ever done. No one's ever questioned me on that at the end of that journey. They're like, nope, you're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Cool. Happy to speak about that histamine bucket analogy for the steroid withdrawal community.
Yes, please.
So basically, if you were to imagine a bucket, and that bucket can fill up with something called histamine. Histamine is an immune chemical. It's an inflammatory mediator. Basically, what that means is when your body is inflamed, many things can cause inflammation. We'll come back to that. When your body's inflamed, it can release more and more histamine. And for the topical steroid withdrawal community, what most of them are actually dealing with is a very high level of inflammation and a high level of histamine. And then we want to examine all the factors that are contributing to that. So histamine is synonymous, for those of you who don't know, it's synonymous with itching, swelling, redness, inflammation, allergies. So, you know, runny nose, sneezing, asthma, postnasal drip congestion. High histamine levels can also be associated with headaches or migraines even. Right? So all kinds of things. High histamine could even be correlated with diarrhea, like loose stools. So the thing about histamine is that there are a dozen or more factors that can drive it up. And each little factor is filling this, I call it a bucket, more and more with histamine. And the more of these contributing factors, the more your bucket fills to the top with histamine, until in a sense it's like flowing over, it's spilling everywhere. You've reached beyond the maximum threshold of your histamine limit in the body. So in a sense, you're no longer able to control these reactions, and then you end up with the itching and scratching and flaking and headaches and allergies and asthma and all these things associated with high histamine. Now, while there are antihistamine drugs, so a lot of you are probably familiar with like Benadryl or Allegra, Singulair, Zyrtec, right? All they're doing is blocking the histamine receptors on your cells so that your body's not reacting to the histamine. It's not actually lowering histamine at all, right? So we're not getting to the root cause. We're just blocking histamine receptors, and that gives us some relief. That's okay, you know, but it's not going to fix the problem. So when we look underneath the hood, we start to examine some of the factors that what contributes to high histamine. Pathogens in the gut are a huge one, especially bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, mold colonization can be a big factor. Hormone imbalances like estrogen dominance, right? Certain nutrient deficiencies. There's certain nutrients like zinc or copper or vitamin C that help our body to eliminate histamine, like draining the bucket, right? In order to get that working, we need to support nutrition and a nutrient-dense diet. right? Dehydration, not drinking enough water, certain genetic polymorphisms or mutations. Some people genetically may have a more difficult time with histamine, but even if there's a genetic component, there's still things we can do to kind of biohack or sort of work around it. I'll stop there. There's a list, there's a long list, but it's basically about test, don't guess. Let's collect all this information so we could find out what is filling up your histamine bucket and how can we slow that down.
Yeah, that is gold. Like that alone made so much sense to me, because once you started to share with me all the things that were contributing to my bucket, it's like, okay, no, it's not just TSW. There are other things that are making this itch worse. And
Right.
inflammation was a big one. I had all kind of bacteria in there. There were lots of contributing factors. That gave me so much hope, because what we go through is you'll start to get better in TSW a little bit, and then you have this random big flare where you're itching and you swell up and you break out, and it's maddening not to know why that's happening. And for me to know that it was some of the bacteria, it was the gluten, there were lots of things. And once we got to those, I stopped having those flare cycles. And I think that's when really my body got a break from the things that were prohibiting it from healing, and we really started to walk through the healing process on the outside. The inside was already healing, but my skin actually started to get better, and I got relief from the itch, and I could start to smile again and go to places again and get out in public again, and it gave me a lot of hope. I'm so grateful for our time together.
I'm so happy to hear, just overjoyed to hear that you're getting your life back. So that's why I was so excited to do this and to be able to share this with other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how is your life looking differently now versus when you were managing chronic illness, and what are some of your hopes and aspirations for the future?
Oh my goodness. My life is so much better. I no longer flake. I don't itch like I used to. And I know I even had, okay, so I wasn't supposed to be eating rice. I know that wasn't a part of our, diet plan, the white rice, but I had a little sushi out at a restaurant, and I was like, why? It wasn't what used to be hopelessness, like, oh my God, TSW is back. It was like, what did I eat? What happened? Okay, like,
so it was more like a minor flare up, not this explosion.
no,
Yeah.
it was a minor flare up. But what happened is that there was gluten in the soy sauce, and I didn't realize that soy sauce has gluten in it. Well, I'm not supposed to be eating soy anyway, but I didn't realize that there was gluten in the soy sauce. So to me, it was so empowering to know, I know why I have this little flare up on my face, and I don't want to run to go get steroids. I don't want to run to go get medicine. I have more information, and I'm empowered to take my life back. When I start to have like a little bit of gas or some stomach issues, I'm like, you know what? It's because I haven't been taking my supplements. I need to get back on what's going on with, the routine.
You like those bitters, those digestive bitters, right?
Bitters are the best thing ever.
Yeah.
If you need to go number 2, get the bitters, because they are the bomb.
I remember you saying they were like liquid gold. I remember that.
Yes, literally, because for me, for so many years, I didn't go number 2 regularly. So when you told me about this, I'm like, this is magic. What is happening here? But overall, my life is better. I don't have perfection in my skin. I no longer aspire for perfection, but I am progressing constantly and regularly. So like, I have like smoothness here, but you see my hands, there's still some wrinkling.
I see that.
But it's
I do.
not inflamed, it's not broken, and it doesn't itch. This is just the damage is being repaired, it'll take some time, discoloration still has some time and needs to come back, but I have so much hope. It's I'm back out in the world, and I have joy. I have so much confidence now, knowing that what I believe came true. My faith actually, combined with action, led to a result. And I feel very passionate about helping other people, because I know people who are going through this for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and there is no time limit on TSW, but I just can't imagine if we work together for the period of time, and so I think it was like 7 months total.
It was about, 6, 7 months. Yeah.
6, 7 months total. And I will say at the end of us working together, I wasn't seeing like amazing results with my skin, but all of my levels and data was better. And I had a plan. And honestly, once we stopped, another 3 months is really when my skin on the outside started to change. But I wasn't afraid to go without you, because we had really gone as far as we needed to go. I had my routine, I had my supplements. You gave me something to manage it, maintenance going forward. So I felt very empowered. And I knew if I just keep going, I keep with my diet and I keep getting out and getting sun and moving my body, I would get better. And 3 months later, I really was getting better. And I'm like, okay, so if I worked with him for 7 months, I got really good after like 10, there's no way you're going through TSW for 5 years with no progress. It's got to be something else. So
it should be faster than that.
It should be faster than that. There's just no way, which is why I feel so passionately. And I was like, I told you we need to do this call because I want to get it out in the community as well, to just give people more hope, because you don't have to go through this. I don't know your timeline because what's going on with your body, but 5 years is just insane to me.
That's really where the magic started happening for me as well, when I started running these functional labs on myself, because I was, in a sense, my first client. And in a sense, what I tell my clients is that the benefit of doing this work together and making that investment in yourself and in lab testing and implementing these protocols is we're compressing the healing timeline. We're compressing time, right? And to me, that's my most valuable asset, because that's a pretty scarce, valuable resource is time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In terms of your timeline too, in terms of you seeing some progress at 6 months, but then really seeing that progress at 9 or 10 months, that's pretty common, pretty normal. And, one of my goals as a practitioner, it's the whole kind of teach a man to fish sort of thing, is sort of empowering the client to be their own healer, and leaving you with a set of tools to stay healthy for a lifetime, right? So even with a very simple example with the food sensitivity testing, if you know what your food sensitivities are, that's information you can carry with you indefinitely, to avoid those triggers that are going to, flare up your inflammation.
Yes, you definitely left me with a manual, not an actual manual, but I feel like I have so much information. I can go back to my recordings. I don't feel confused. When you don't know what's going on with your body, the confusion alone just has you wandering and frustrated and wanting to go back to the conventional medicine, because you're like, I just need some relief. And I see so many people who they give up steroids, and this is no judgment, but they go to Dupexent, which is the biologic, or they get on Protopic, which is the immunosuppressant. And I remember mentioning this to you, and you're like, you never judged, you never told me exactly what to do, but you would explain to me that actually isn't doing anything for you. That's just extending the time it's going to take for your body to heal, and your immune system really needs to be strong in order to do this. So it was never judgment. It was just education that I don't recommend that, because So a lot of education. This wasn't just a doctor patient type relationship. This was a coach who empowers you to get healed, get information, and go forth and continue. And if anything were to ever come again that was, I'm not going to let it get extreme, but if I can't figure something out, I know where to go back to, and I have confidence that we're going to get some information, deal with whatever that is, and then keep going. So I'm not dependent on you, but I was empowered by you.
Love that. So elegantly stated. And you're so well spoken. You've been so gracious and generous with your time today, and genuinely hope that we're able to share this across the web and get people viewing this video to get inspired, get some hope. So with that being said, yeah, any final words of wisdom that you'd want to leave, maybe for someone who's stuck or suffering with any, chronic symptom, not just the topical steroid withdrawal?
I guess the only words that I would give is that you know in your gut that there is a way. You just don't know how. Get with a doctor. I prefer this one to help you navigate that journey. You're not feeling that way. You stop suppressing the intuition that you have to know that there is a way, despite what everybody else is saying, despite what doctors are saying. You have this little whisper inside of you of saying there's got to be a better way. There is. You just need a guide to help you go through it. And there are some people who say, hey, I don't have the money. Yes, you have the money. You have the money for something that is, your health is the most valuable thing that you have in your life. Find the money. The investment is not, it's not an expense. It is an investment that is going to continue to give back to you for the rest of your life. And if you could look back at your life at 50, when things are breaking down and you're really, whatever the age is, let's say later in your life, you're breaking down and it's harder to heal because you're older and you've let things go for a long amount of time, you can look back and say, I wish I would have. I regret. Like, the cost of regret is so much more than the cost of investment now. So no matter what your age is, no matter what the illness is, there is a way. Find someone to help you go through the journey and pick him.
Love that. So much wisdom there. So much wisdom. And you're totally right. Any money I've ever invested in my health, I've never regretted. It's always come back to me many times over, right? And your health is the most valuable investment you could possibly make, because if you don't have that, you don't really have much of a foundation to work on, right? And that can ripple outward to every realm and aspect of your health.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you again. I cannot thank you enough for doing this with me today. We're going to get this right up on Facebook and Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere we can. So thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you so much. And it was a total honor to work with you. So happy to see you vibrant and glowing and thriving and just improving every day. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.